Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 23 of the Office Hours podcast. In this episode, we broadly focused on merits of university education for being a software developer versus potentially doing self-learning or attending a boot camp. That was kind of the broad theme of this entire conversation, with various other bits and pieces strung in there. So if you're interested in where this is going, please stick around, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the episode 23 of the Office Hours podcast, our first episode in the year 2024. So let's open this year with all the good vibes. Mo, let's take it away. How you've been? How was your New Year's celebration? Did you get a chance to bring any of the traditions from home into this one, or not yet?
Not really. I wouldn't say because the tradition will involve like other people from home, like family. But I live here just me. But it was good. It's different from other years because um I got to really like hang out with friends and spend some time with you know, some family. But it's not the same. I would
Right.
say I would rate it 8.5.
That's
That was
still
good, right?
pretty good. Yeah, I mean, 8.5 is it's
Yeah,
decent. Yeah, it's solid.
yeah,
If you
pretty
said like
decent.
4, I'd be like, oh, 4. Oh, yeah, yeah,
No, 8.5
yeah,
was solid.
yeah.
Had a really nice Christmas dinner, and then um, got to spend time with some of the people I haven't seen in a while. You know how like adulting is, where you don't get to see your friends every time,
Hmm.
but it is what it is.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it was good. How was yours?
It was pretty good. It was pretty small. We had some of our friends over. We kind of did like a delayed Christmas dinner with family the day before. So that was like on the 30th. And then on the 31st, we had a couple of our friends over and some friends of friends that we haven't met before, but so it was
Yeah,
pretty good. It
the
was
more the
pretty good.
merrier.
Good
Yeah,
conversation, yes. So, I send you the picture of the table with all of the foods, remember?
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and basically after that I'm doing the January World Carnivore month. So I'm trying to go hard at like not eating all of the things that we had for our New Year's feast. So it's back to basics for me, but I don't know. I think it's working. I don't have that much to show for it, but it
Yeah,
takes a little bit of time. It's only been like a week, so
yeah. I'm rooting for you, Vasili.
thank you,
I'm
thank you.
rooting for you because I know it's a bit challenging, like to break the diet and get back into it. And I didn't know how challenging it was until, I joined you with the diet thing. And yeah, I can tell. I know the struggle, but courage.
Yes, yes. I
But
I found that like cold turkey works probably best for me. I just if I try to sort of taper off, there's
mhm,
still too many temptations, and it's just hard. Whether you have something at home that you can kind of cheat on food wise, but if you don't have anything, it's like okay,
mhm.
well, it's all gone, so there's no point in salivating over all of the snacks. They're just not here, so kind of do the thing.
Yeah, my struggle right now is the online deliveries.
Oh yeah,
You have this like, oh, it's not there, but you realize, well, I could just order it,
it's one phone call
and
away.
then
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, we're trying. We're really working for good health this year. So, how about work? How's it like for you going back to work?
The craziness kind of continues. It hasn't. Excuse me. It hasn't really subsided that much. Uh, I find that I'm kind of in a way, like a little bit of a victim of my own success in a sense that I am so helpful to people that now
Mhm.
naturally they just turn to me very often, even with things that, they probably could sort out on their own. It's just that they know, oh yeah, like Vasili is always there to answer whatever question we may have. So they do that. And it's kind
That's
of
a good
funny.
thing.
Well, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing because like I have some tickets sitting on my board that have been sitting there for like several sprints. I honestly intend to work on them. I just don't have the time in the day to actually like focus on that stuff because, fighting all of the fires and helping other people with their problems. So on one hand, it's a plus because, it gets people unstuck elsewhere. But on the other hand,
Mhm.
it's like I'm neglecting the things that I'm supposed to be doing myself. Not ideal. And it's kind of funny, in Slack, I put on like do not disturb, and people just like keep sending me stuff anyway. So today we
Well,
today we had our retro, and I was like, guys, if I set up don't disturb, that does mean don't disturb, please. There's other channels, there's other people. I'm not the only person that knows all of the things. There's other people who are knowledgeable. Like, try them out first. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily frustrated by it. I think my manager is way more frustrated by it than I am because, she's getting grief from higher ups that's like, oh, these tickets have been sitting on this board for too long. What's going on? And it's like, yeah, I'm not sitting on my ass. I'm just doing other things that prevent me from getting to it, which is it's hard to communicate the reasons for these things up across because that context, that immediate context kind of gets lost with every layer in
mhm.
in the corporate hierarchy. So it's something for all of us to kind of work on, myself included. I just need to be more um harsh, probably, it would seem like, with sending people away, or yeah, I don't know, in some cases just like maybe shutting off Slack and not being online to kind of get my stuff done, which, it
Yeah,
also needs doing. So there's no getting away from it, at least right now.
yeah, yeah. But it's a good thing that a lot of people find you resourceful within the team. I think it's something that it a lot of people actually want to achieve. Most people, maybe like us or something, like we want to, but also the downside is like it also affects like your productivity on the other side of things too. But I think at some point you'll be able to find the balance. And
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
as the
yeah,
team
it's true.
matures, maybe you also be able to find because
Yeah, I think
after
I,
like a
I
few
think it's
months,
also related to the fact that, we hired a bunch of new people, and
yeah,
so until everybody kind of fully groks everything that's going on, it's inevitable that, they all require help. So we'll
yeah,
see. Hopefully it'll subside. And then yeah,
yeah.
next week or the week after, I'm going on call, which I can't say that I'm too excited about. So
Why not? When you said it, like, do
uh
you have a lot of issues when you
it's
or
it's
it's
not
just like,
even that we have a lot of issues, it's just like I haven't been working on a project that I'm going on call for in like 8 months.
yeah,
So I kind of have no clue as per what's going on in there, and all of the on-call
yeah,
procedures that I've done. Like last time I was on
mhm,
call was probably like in the summer, so I don't even remember most of it, and I feel like I'll be the one bugging everybody for things to do and how to do them because it's been so long. And yeah, as I said, like I haven't been on it for a really long time. I guess we'll see.
yeah, yeah. I can relate to that. I think we have this similar tradition in my team. We call it rotation.
Mm-hmm.
So we go in in circles, but you on this team, the support team, you have to take care of like a bit more urgent things like for clients and all this kind of, so it's like very, it could be intense, but it's not something you're used to, so it's not the same environment that you were working on, so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
probably not, you have no idea what so you need a few days to figure things out, but yeah,
yeah, yeah,
hopefully but at the end of the day it's still a lot of learning,
yeah,
and it probably just helps you to understand the bigger picture.
yeah.
Yeah,
The other thing is it starts at 6 a.m., so that's not fun.
for you
Yeah, yeah,
it
for
starts
me,
at
for
6
me,
a.m.
for me, because it is
Yeah,
9
I was
9 a.m.
wondering.
Toronto time, but for me it's 6
Yeah,
a.m. So normally my day start at 7, which I'm not 100% a fan of, but I've kind of gotten used to it. But now it's like 6 a.m. for a whole week, including the weekends. That's gonna be, yeah.
yeah.
We'll get through
It's
it.
good.
It's
It's
only
good.
a week.
It's good. 6 a.m. Then you get to wake up early, you know,
Yeah.
but you don't go to sleep early too, do you?
Uh, for that to work well in terms of total number of hours for sleep, I'd have to go to bed at like 9 and be asleep by 10, which we're like struggling to do right now in a regular schedule. So it's going to be on top of that.
You know, um, a few days ago, I had this scenario. Yeah, I was supposed to like my schedule. Normally, I wake up at 5:30 every day, but in the last, I think that should be on a Tuesday or so. Anyway, and I woke up late, and then I started thinking to myself, like, would it be possible? And then I woke up late and still tired. Do you understand? Like, there's a difference in waking up late issue is already bad enough. Then you
Yeah.
woke up late and still tired. That's just not a good
But
recipe.
that's
So
like
I
when you
was
were
thinking
sleeping
to
5 hours a night, though, right?
no, this is no, it wasn't really 5 hours. Like now it's like 6-ish. But the thing now is I was thinking, would it be possible to have a wake up pill? Like you know how we have like sleeping pills
Yes, yes.
that gets us to sleep? Would it be possible to have a wake up pill? You
I
know, the ones that you
yeah.
just like wake up and you're just like good to go immediately.
I think it would be very difficult to fine tune the precise time release. Like, because normally like slow release pills, they like coat it in some sort of substance that like slowly degrades so that it like, releases on
Mhm.
a prolonged cycle. But in this case, it's like if I need to wake up at 10, the conditions have to match it. I don't think it's gonna happen, but it's a fun idea. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember. I remember what was it? There was this YouTuber, and she had trouble waking up, and she like built all these different contraptions trying to wake her up. And one of them was like a fly swatter mounted on a motor that would like start slapping her head when the timer came to be. It
Yeah.
didn't work out too well in all of the cases. And I think if you maintain proper sleep cycle and stick to exact same schedule, including weekends, which is a biggest pain I think right now in a modern society, then you don't really
Mhm.
have trouble waking up. I usually, if I maintain my schedule, I usually wake up like 5-10 minutes before my alarm clock hits reliably on my own. So it's
You know,
if you have trouble waking up, it's a symptom of other issues.
I was gonna ask you about uh, a theory about sleeping that,
Mm.
that I was thinking about. I realized that there's a lot of factors with like sleeping, there is you can go to sleep at like the same time every day or go to sleep at try to wake up at the same time every day. But there are other factors like the quality of your bed, the air in the room, like the type of sheets. There's many factors to guarantee that you will wake up at the same time every day with the same level of energy every day. So
Mm.
sometimes I feel when people suggest like going to sleep early, um, suggest you getting the best out of sleep. I genuinely don't know. I don't know if it's true, but because of this other fact. So for example, I know that within myself, I know that the amount, the quality of my sleep during the summer is different from like in the winter because I have the heaters on and sometimes they could get uncomfortable and then struggle you struggle to breathe a little bit sometimes. Or maybe like if you open the windows it gets too cold or maybe it gets too warm. There are different levels of this thing. So I don't know. I don't know if like it's it is even accurate to say you can go to sleep at 10 o'clock every day and you wake up at 5 o'clock every day with the same level of energy.
Well, fair enough. I think that probably going to sleep at the same time and waking up at the same time is maybe one of the bigger contributors to it. Like I understand right now with like artificial lighting and not strictly following the circadian rhythms and, waking up at sunrise, going to bed at sunset, that would have been normal for thousands of years. Now we have artificial lighting that kind of throws everything out the window. And temperature, definitely. If it's like too cold or too hot, I would be uncomfortable. But I can also tell you this: there was a period of my life where I got like a hand-me-down mattress when I moved to my apartment. And after sleeping on it for a few months, I felt like my back was just getting wrecked, even though I was in my 20s. So that was not, should not have been something, 20-year-olds normally don't complain about their backs. And at some point in time, I said, you know what? I have a feeling that I would have better results if I just sleep on the floor, as in like on a hard surface, and floor being the closest as I can get to a hard surface. That is also reasonable. I did exactly that for quite a while, maybe not an entire year, maybe even for an entire year. It's been like a long time. It wasn't just directly on the floor. I bought like a thick jute rug and I put a little bit of padding in there, but it wasn't something soft that like, that the mattress that kind of you can roll in
Okay.
the middle. That's too soft, is a very hard
Mhm.
surface, and it definitely took some getting used to. And there was like some side effects. Like I could not necessarily use pillows because they were too tall, because uh, it doesn't compress nearly as much on the
As
floor
the
as
mattress.
opposed to
Mhm.
excuse me, on a mattress. And so I ended up like rolling a towel into like a little cylinder and putting it under my neck. But I have to tell you, it kind of proven to me that you can sleep on pretty much any surface. It, like you can still get good sleep. Even sleeping on a floor, I was able to get really good sleep. And it definitely helped with my back and my joints and alignment of joints. Because at the time I was also doing trampoline gymnastics. And if you have imbalance in your hip tilt, that drastically affects the quality of your vertical jumping when you're preparing to do some kind of element. And if it's out of alignment, then you get like swayed side to side. It's just like you want to be straight,
Mm,
right, for this to work
okay.
out the best. And I remember going and I was just like, oh my God, every time I go up in the air, I feel crooked and I don't feel confident enough. I feel like if I start doing some element, I'll like twist in a weird way. And after doing that for several months, it was like, hey, my hips are aligned properly now. I can take off
Really?
vertically without feeling like I'm like leaning sideways and falling off to one side. Yeah. So it was a big deal. And eventually I stopped doing it. But to this day, we have a pretty firm mattress. Look, I'm not a big fan of soft mattresses. I remember going to a conference in Vegas, and the company was paying for the hotel, so it was pretty nice hotel, and it had like super soft mattress, and I was like, Jesus Christ, it's impossible for me to sleep on it. I feel terrible. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I think also that also helps if you have some kind of snoring problems, because like if you kind of tilt inward, you can get some minor obstructions to your airways. And if you're sleeping on a floor and you mostly sleep on your back, it's harder to sleep on your side. I think I would probably fall asleep on my side, but then in the middle of the night I would effectively, like, once you're all on your back, it's kind of hard to get back on a side unless you're doing it deliberately, and while you're asleep you're usually not doing that. I remember just waking up on my back, and I think that opens up the airways too, so you get better breathing. So I guess the point was, like, yeah, mattress does matter, but you can get amazing sleep even without one. So that's to be considered. And I think that uh mostly distractions, distractions before bed is the thing that affects a lot the falling asleep part. Right now, I kind of went a little bit more nuclear compared to before. Not only I'm blocking YouTube at a certain time of day, now I'm blocking most distracted apps at a certain time of day on my phone. So if I want to,
How are you doing that?
so I'm using OnePlus, and their firmware has like a focus mode, which I guess is intended for work, so you don't get interrupted. But I kind of use it not. I don't use my phone during the workday, so it's not a problem for me that way. Because I guess, on a little tangent, I keep my phone perpetually on silent, so I don't really react that much to notifications. I don't really have any apps that give me notifications because I don't have any social media. So the only notifications would arise if somebody's messaging me. And most of the group chats and channels and other things I have muted. So they don't show up. They show up the number of unread messages, and I can get to it eventually at the end of the day or in the beginning of the day. And otherwise, only if people message me directly, which is not that often to be like a big deal. So my phone doesn't really distract me, and like the screen doesn't turn on if I receive a notification. It like maybe the light starts blinking. So if I'm not paying attention to it, I might not even look at it for hours. And I also have all of my messengers to be reachable open on my computer. So if somebody really needs to get in touch, they can. So that's not a big deal. And then yeah, at night is when, or in the evening, like if I'm not working, then I'll probably be on my phone, and that's the time where I need to kind of prevent myself from browsing mindlessly. I recently watched this video from this guy. It actually came out a couple of days ago, and he said that he tried to live smartphone free for a year with various disclaimers. Like it wasn't like 100% thing. I think he eventually reverted to not basically doing what I'm doing, is like not checking social media and not getting stuck, and kind of just using it for things like maps and occasional Google search, but deliberately reducing his interactions with his smartphone during the day. And he said that the biggest distraction is not the smartphone itself, but rather the social media with all of its notifications. And I don't have that, so that's not really a problem for me. It's mostly time suck websites that you deliberately go to, like in my case, YouTube. You know, the shorts. I mentioned that I've been blocking shorts because there was one time recently where it was like Friday, and I was like, oh well, it's Friday night. I don't have to go to work tomorrow. Maybe I should just like, spend some time and zone out, and then boom, 2:30 a.m. YouTube Shorts. Here we go again. And I was like, okay, never again. I tried it. I can't control it, so it's better. Again, as with not eating certain things. For me, just cut it off entirely, and then the temptation doesn't arise, because if you allow it to yourself a little bit, it's like having a little bit of drugs. It just ensures that you're hooked and continue to remain hooked for longer. So to me, just quitting it and suffering a little bit in the beginning and having like the itch and the desire to constantly check it. And it does go away. I did it with other sites before, like some infinite scroll type sites, like, like Reddit and Imgur and things like that, where it's just never ends. And I would install the block on my browser. So anytime I open that website, it just shows me the block page, and I can bypass it. The thing is mostly like it gives you that little trip so that you can say, that's right, I don't really need this right now, and not go there. And eventually the desire to go there, that sort of tick, it kind of goes away. I was talking to somebody and I'm like, don't you have that thing where you go to some website, there's nothing on it, you close it, and then you open a tab and then you go to that website again? And that person was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, oh, really? Interesting. Because I do that all the time, or I used to do that all the time with some websites. It's like, Hacker News, nothing interesting, close it. I'm bored, let's open a new tab. Hacker News is like, oh shit, I just been here 3 seconds ago. Like, what am I doing? And so having that little speed bump on a way definitely helps to unlearn that tick where my brain is spinning its wheels. I have to go and input some information. So let's open some news site and read something, whatever it is, whatever it might be. I don't really care. I just need more information coming in because I'm kind of hooked. And so like YouTube Shorts is really the worst of that, because they're short and small, and you just keep going and going and going and going, and it's like really hard to stop. So it's better not to get into that quicksand at all, because the more you struggle, the harder it becomes to get out of it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I think we discussed this a while ago as well. I had the same issue with like other social media applications. It used to be Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
and Twitter at some point. I mean, X. I think it's gonna get it's gonna be a while for me to get used to calling it X. It doesn't even make sense, but anyway, it
Yeah,
is what it is.
it is.
X. But so I used to go on there, especially now. Good segue to this. So now I have this plan to to meet like backstory. Okay, let's start from the backstory. I joined X again, not too long ago, and I've been kind of active. And I saw there's something called Tech Twitter, where a bunch of people who are getting into tech or like working in tech actually like connect and just like talk about different things, ask random questions. So for a while, I was kind of observing certain people on my timeline and like just seeing some people who are getting into tech and like learning in public. That's how they say it. That's the term on Twitter, you know. And then I started thinking about it like it'd be nice, to meet some of these people and probably just like help them with their ambition,
Hmm.
like a form of mentorship, like a form of even friendship or whatever. Sometimes I think when some people they learn coding in a way that they mostly usually like end up in a cycle and you just like learning different languages, but you don't really know them enough to be able to work with it. But you think the more languages you know is the more chances you have, which not necessarily because if you only know one, but you know it well enough to be able to work with it, and knowing it to be able to work with it, it's a different type of skill actually because you have to be in the industry a little bit to be able to see certain things, how it works, and what to do. So I was thinking about this, right? And yeah, so now I'm kind of like hooked on the Twitter thing because I'm trying to like see how many people that I will be able to do this with on Twitter. And even if I want to do it, because people are quite different. I don't know. You never know who even needs it or not. But that's just one thing that I'm working on this year. So we'll see.
Hmm.
This is one of my ambitions for the year. Probably I should be able to help 5 people. I think that would be enough. If I'm able to do this for like 5 people. I don't know. So this is where I found it. But also subsequently, my intention of being on Twitter was because I think I told you before, it's like for me, I want like an association of people who do the same thing like me, or maybe like professionals as well. So then I started thinking that I'll probably find this more on LinkedIn than on Twitter. But I don't know why most people go on LinkedIn and don't want to be on LinkedIn because it's like everybody sits the conversation then is just different. But the people that you really want to associate with probably be on LinkedIn. I don't know. But what would you suggest? Like if to achieve this type of ambition, like maybe just being able to help someone who seemed very
Mm.
passionate or like was really trying a lot or probably have done many things to get into the industry, but
Yeah,
just need a little bit of knowledge.
right.
What would be your introductory conversation? Because some people don't know that they need help even,
Hmm.
but but they really do.
Right,
I
right.
don't know.
So
And
I guess we've moved on from the conversation of like how social media affecting your sleep patterns and more of a into using it for something else.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
yeah, I mean, sorry, LinkedIn recently enabled this thing where they just fill your feed with these suggested posts, and most of them have nothing to do with what I want. And in fact, for most of LinkedIn, and I know some people probably might be surprised by this, but like I unfollowed pretty much most people that I'm connected with, so we can still retain connections and like chat if need be. But in terms of what most people post on LinkedIn, it's such a boomer platform. Like there's this Russian website that used to be it appeared a way back when, And the original intention was to find your classmates, like people you went to school back in the day. And when it first launched, like I was already in Canada and I haven't spoken or seen anybody from that time in like a decade or more. And so when I registered on it and found some people that I used to go to school with back in my hometown, it was kind of cool. And then eventually it got bought by some massive IT conglomerate and turned into more of a social network. And for some reason, like all the kids were on Facebook and all of the kids' parents were on that thing. And they would post this absolutely cringe stuff all the time, like cheesy and like just, oh man, that was a place never to go to if you want to kind of
Yeah.
retain any aspects of coolness and in youth. It was a black hole. And to me, LinkedIn kind of has the same kind of vibe right now. It's just these cringy motivational posters with like kittens hanging off a branch with a text "hang in there" type stuff. Like all of the, if you ever watched Office Space, like all of the cringiest parts of Office Space is like LinkedIn personified. And I know that like I post on YouTube and I post the episodes on LinkedIn, and like I do get some engagements. I mean, for the podcast, I mean, I do get very little engagement on LinkedIn, even though I am connected to a whole bunch of people on LinkedIn. It's like over 1,500, I think. Uh, and I guess with the onslaught of these suggested posts and all of that stuff, that stuff kind of gets drowned out in the noise. I know that LinkedIn also has groups where I think it's like theme-based groups where you join, like there's like a Java group and then there's all these other groups. I haven't really tried those. I haven't really tried sort of this social media aspect of things because it is not my intention to become an influencer, you know, in a way that it's currently like the associations with that term. Like I'm not aiming for some massive popularity. And if somebody watches this podcast and gets influenced by it to some positive, hopefully direction, that's good. But my goal is not to be the next super popular streamer. I guess it's just not something that I'm seeking necessarily. I'm seeking to share my knowledge and experience, because I think if you play the influencer game, it has very specific optimization criteria which are soul destroying. I just don't want to go that route. I like so far I'm gainfully employed and I don't need this to supplement my income, so I don't have to do any of the things on the path of monetization. And I don't know, it's somewhat related to what you were asking. You were asking more about how to kind of help people who are starting out in IT. And it's an interesting question, because like unless they come to you, I feel like it may be presumptuous to think that you know what might be good for them. Uh, but when we first started talking, I remember just asking, it's like, so what is it that you want to do? Like what is
Yeah.
your major goal? Like
Yeah.
where do you
Yeah.
see yourself in 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of
Yeah.
started the conversation. And from your own experience, you can then gauge whether what they're saying makes sense or not, and whether there's
So,
gaps, right? So I think that would be the
yeah.
first thing to try. It's like, what is it exactly that you're looking for?
I've been playing X algorithm these days, just watching some people on my timeline. There are some people that I can see that they are trying something, like they post like codes and then like they post like regularly to talk about what they're working on, their projects. There are few people. So I'm just like paying attention to these people, but I'm thinking about if I want to reach out. But the thing is, you don't know you don't know people like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot just like randomly reach out to people. So, and some of these people currently like are connected with me on X, but so my idea was to probably reach out to them in a way like, you know, create a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I say this like I know how to do it, or if I should, or even if I'm qualified to do this. But I would really like to help. This is just
Hmm.
one thing. It's just, I guess, like my questions will be what to keep in mind
Hmm.
if you intend to do stuff like this, because first, these are people you don't know, and at some point, some people also have this mindset that coming into this industry is a way for them to make quick money, and it's not. So when you start realizing that it's not, or someone tells you like, oh, they're a software engineer, so like you expect them to like earn a lot of money in a year, so like
Yeah.
starting from the beginning might be difficult for a lot of people. But I don't know. I don't even know what my strategy would be yet. So I guess I'm in the point where like I'm trying to like prepare a form of strategy for doing something like this in a way
Yeah.
that it's helpful for everyone. And
But I mean,
yeah,
Twitter
so
has
this is what I'm gonna learn.
so many millions of people, so you can also just wing it. And if it fails with this person, you can learn the lessons, and maybe it'll work a little bit better with the next, right? It's not like you have one chance of
Okay.
talking and then that's it. Once you blew it, nobody's ever going to talk to you. So maybe you can spend a lot of time planning, or alternatively, you could just start executing and seeing what happens. As
Mm,
we said the last time, right? It's just like pick a direction, stick with it, and see how far it takes you, right? So that's kind of the same
yep.
thing, right? Just wing it, like it could work, it could
You never
not
know.
work. Yeah.
You
But
never know.
if you
Yeah.
never try, you never fail.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True. Someone was saying something also. I think someone mentioned like, oh, um, they don't understand people who go to this are maybe I come to you with like some of the things I read on Twitter. That'd be
Hmm.
interesting. So yeah, one
Yeah.
of the things I read recently was that someone came up to say um they don't understand why people who actually go to school to learn for computer science or software engineering um may not necessarily be good. I mean, are not usually, it was a very decided phrase. So, like, are not usually good at coding. The people that are good at coding are like self-taught developers. And this is just one person's opinion. And then someone came up to argue with him, like, oh, like this is what you said is not it's not true. Like you should look at the people who actually built up these languages that we're using. They're not people who are self-taught. Most of them have PhDs or like, whatever postgraduate degrees. And someone argued, and then the guy concluded himself and was like, well, yeah, maybe they're not good at programming, they're just better QAs and
Right.
they're better QAs
Yeah.
and and for code reviews and for code reviews. And in that moment I realized this person probably doesn't really work as a software engineer right now.
So it's Twitter too, you know.
Yeah, in that moment, I realized this person definitely doesn't work. And then
Yeah.
I did a little bit of background search on the guy, and I saw that he graduated in 2013 and currently has a position as a senior software engineer somewhere in Kenya.
Hmm.
And then I thought about it, yeah, I get this. Like, you just like give yourself some random title. Anyway, the point I was trying to make is that do you, when it comes to like, um, code reviews
Hmm.
and um, do you really think that you need you need first, do you agree with what he said? First of all, how do you feel about people who are self-taught developers and people who actually go to school to to learn these things?
I definitely
I would like
can,
to.
yeah, can concur with the fact that, so I know that people who, especially people who go for university, like
Mhm,
I went to BCIT, which is a college technically, so it's not a university. It was a 2 year program. It was, a lot of it was very hands-on, but it wasn't
mhm,
very recent in terms of technology stacks that we used. It was still like quite a ways back, right?
mhm,
We haven't used any of the hype new modern things because, again, I think I mentioned it before, curriculum development takes time. And
mhm,
if you're teaching basics and principles, it doesn't really matter. You can use an older language and be totally fine with it. So, but people who go for like a more academic, like a 5-year university program or something, they usually come out of it, and in practical terms, as in taking that person and plugging them into a team and expecting immediate results, very, very rarely, if ever, I've seen that happen. Like, sure, they have a lot of theoretical knowledge, but in practical terms, it's like, oh, you haven't had a chance to use any of the industry standard tools. Like, no one teaches Jira at a university. I mean, there's not that much to know about it, but like, there's a lot of these concepts that are an everyday occurrence in a world of like professional development, like all of the tooling, you know, like even basic things like linting, formatting, continuous integration, code review processes like Git. I mean, they do teach Git a little bit, but again, it's more of a like, hey, here's Git. You can store source code in there, and you can clone and you can branch, but it rarely goes into more advanced topics, of which Git has many. I granted it's not like the nicest UX to work with, but there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. And usually you only learn these things during the professional development time. You never learn those things at school. And so it's just like the practical things they lack. And the other thing is, it's like, okay, sure, you spend a lot of time learning all of the patterns, and now you think that everything is solved with patterns and there's a pattern for everything. And if one pattern doesn't fit, you can probably combine 3 other ones to be in its place. And usually software, like, I find that it's very, very rare that you would build a very sort of software according to all of these patterns and it turns out great. It usually turns out into quite a bit of a mess. And so again, and a lot of things in even in my personal evolution, it's like you adopt certain viewpoints. You start, maybe you doing OOP because again you were taught OOP at your school, you do classes, you do all of that stuff, and then you start hitting some rough edges, and maybe eventually you'll evolve into like functional. And usually people who try functional kind of get obsessed with it. They speak about like lambdas and monads and nobody knows what the hell they're talking about. And I went through that phase myself where it's like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if all of our functions that we write are point free? And like, it's like, it is cool from sort of like nerdy cool perspective. It's like, hey, look what I can do. Look at this fancy 0 point function that like is so all applied, and there's like pipelines and all of this stuff. But then in practical terms, it's just a total nightmare to debug, and nobody can read it. And even you can't read it after 3 months. You look at it, what the hell's going on, right? So in practical terms, it's not as cool because it just wrecks everybody else's day. And eventually you settle in this very pragmatic style where you know what tools to reach for when appropriate, and not just be like patterns, 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 or like functional, functional, functional. And a lot of younger developers, probably because they haven't been exposed to as much stuff, they tend to be there tends to be way more zealotry about things and very, very strong opinions, whether they are appropriate or not, and again, whether they're founded in reality or not. And remember, like a couple of episodes ago, I was saying how I read this phrase that I broadly agree with. It's like, a junior developer with a lot of strong opinions is not a good thing, and the senior developer without a lot of strong opinions is not a good thing. And so that junior developer with a lot of strong opinions part it's like maybe valid, but mostly you probably don't fully understand what you're talking about. You're just regurgitating some opinions that you heard elsewhere, but you haven't gone through enough to justify them based on your personal experience. You just repeating other people's experience without having the context. And so in that case, yes. So when that person says, well, look at all of the compiler developers, they're all PhDs. I don't think that a PhD, like, okay, maybe some PhDs can come out. There's certainly a case where there's exceptionally smart people that come out and start doing absolutely crazy things. But I imagine like after that PhD, those people still worked a bunch in the industry and then or maybe they specialized in compiler development. Maybe that was the whole point of their PhD, right? Because that, like, it would be a good thesis if you build your own language with your own compiler and your own ideas about how to like optimize things. So I felt like that specific remark was kind of an apples to oranges comparison, because, you know,
Yeah.
it's not exactly the same. So what was the second part of your question? I kind of forgot.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna get to the second part, but I just wanna hear my opinion about this with you. Um, I've never been to a bootcamp or this kind of things, but I really feel like of all the classes of engineering, software engineering seems to be like the most bless you, the most how to say it, like doesn't gain enough enough respect that it deserves. But this is because of the nature of the industry. There is a lot of work for the amount of people that we have around. And for this, um, of course, this is a capitalism issue. And now we have to find more people who should be able to do this work, right? So hence the idea of having a group of people, training them for a few months, teaching them the basics of like everything. But software engineering is not just coding. You can know how to code, but that doesn't make you a good software engineer because there's a lot more to it. And nowadays, the with the idea of having like frameworks or like having all this like layers that make like development even easier is what makes it. So, for example, you can learn Angular and not really know enough about JavaScript,
Yeah.
and you will do well
You
to
learned
some
React
extent.
before you learned JavaScript, right?
Yeah, this is true. People actually do this. That doesn't make you, it's just, you are just the solution to the issue of the capitalism. This is how I see it. Like, people, they want more workers. But the fact that you have someone who is like university trained and someone who is bootcamp trained working in the same position, and I don't think everyone is different, but I don't think it's a fair comparison because, and this is why I think um, everyone starts from the same level, right? And even a civil engineer coming out of university does not make you the same as a senior engineer in the civil industry.
Mm-hmm.
So you still have to learn no matter what. Like, you will still have a learning period where you gain all your experience. This is how it is in other levels of engineering, electrical engineering, whatever level of engineering, even business engineering, as they call it now, whatever. So um, there will always be learning period for everyone.
Yeah.
You learn, you gain the experience on the job experience, how to interact with your teammates, how to do certain things, even learn about the codes, like the entire like stuff that you've learned.
Yeah.
While you were in school. You will use all this knowledge in school. Some of them will be useful for you, some of them maybe not, never go there. There are some certain skills that I learned in uni that I never not really been able to use yet, but I guess it will come up one day. But so I don't necessarily think that some people are starting to have this notion like, oh, it's a waste of time to go to school to study computer science, or it's a waste of time to go to school to study software engineering. I think if we continue with this mindset, there will come a time where like the quality of this engineering of our output will be so will be questionable because then the quality would not be as good. So, for example, would you prefer to have a university trained civil engineer help you build your roads, or would you prefer someone who just hung out with a bunch of like engineers for like 6 months to build your road? Who would you prefer? A doctor, a university trained doctor, or someone who lived with doctors for many years?
You're opening a
Who would you prefer?
big can of worms here, Mo, a big can of worms.
No, this is true, but this is how like we have seen computer because it is accessible.
Yes.
You don't have to buy a lot of like things because you think like, oh, it's on the computer, it's easy. You
It's
just download a
definitely
bunch of
more
things.
accessible than all of the other things that you've mentioned.
So So it makes people think that this is something that you can easy, and that doesn't give enough resources. I mean, there's tons of people who actually get through this themselves, which is good. I mean, but again, I think coding is like the easiest part of software engineering. Anybody can do it. Like now we even have AI that can even blot out codes for us, and like
Yeah,
coding is like the easiest part. There are other
right.
levels to it, and if people are focusing on this part alone, I don't think um, this is a sustainable idea for the craft.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I
this
see
is
what
this
you
is
mean.
just
I
my
see what
opinion.
you Yeah, yeah, no, I think I see what you mean, and I am of kind of two minds on this. Is in a sense, I broadly agree with the statement that like you don't have to go to university if you want to learn how to code. Like they do not have a monopoly. The thing is with other professions, universities have a monopoly on that profession because if you want to be a civil engineer, you have to be certified by some authority. If you want to be a doctor, you have to be certified by some authority. And there's no circumventing that unless you decide to move to some third world country that does not track these types of things and just wing it and whatever happens happens, right? Uh, but software is one of those areas that probably like 95% of it, excluding maybe medical equipment and maybe military equipment or maybe something to do with, high risk scenarios like automotive or whatever, where it's a literal free for all. Anyone can do it and people do, right? And because there is no artificial barrier to entry, because arguably, if you think about it long enough, any type of licensing is an artificial barrier to entry, for better or for worse. I think the original intent is, okay, we have people who are not as qualified, and as a result, other people suffer. So we'd like to prevent that. And therefore, we want to have some authority saying who can and who cannot be that thing. And we have it for any profession, pretty much. Like, you want to be a naturopath or whatever, you have to have there is some organization that claimed upon itself the role of, you know, filtering people who can and people who cannot officially. And if you practice it without their approval, you're gonna get in trouble. But it is artificial because if I possess the knowledge, I just haven't gone through that particular route. That in itself, that does not invalidate the fact that I know stuff, right? So software doesn't have it, as I mentioned again, for most part. If you want to build a web page, go and build a web page. So university is strictly speaking not needed. I think if you go that route, it also tends to narrow maybe a little bit the professional domain. Because if you spend all of that time and money to go there, you really want to have a good payout on your hands. So you would go into these fields. So like, I think if you want to do AI, not as a consumer, but like building your own stuff in AI and not just even repurposing other people's models, which a lot of that is happening too. People build upon other people's work. But if you want to develop new things in AI domain or like anything related to machine algorithms, you probably want to go to university because it's a very academic kind of foundation for that entire enterprise. But if you spend 5 years in a university and somebody asks you to build some web page in React, you're probably going to be like, ugh, this is way beneath my perceived skill, right? So it tends to filter you out into a different type of bucket. But I guess also with the economies of scale, there's been a lot of demand. It's like, everybody in the 90s wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer. And now we have like bajillions doctors and bajillions of lawyers, and you can still get a good legal advice and good healthcare. So there's definitely this lag, right, between demand and supply. And eventually there comes a point where demand has been satisfied, but the supply side keeps churning out more people, right? And so yeah, I don't know at what point we are right now in this scenario. I think that still for software there's constant appetite for more and more developers. So, but it's weird, there's constant appetite for more developers, but at the same time all the big companies are like constantly laying off a bunch of people. Like Twitch just laid off a bunch of people. Google apparently had like a third round of layoffs and are like laying off thousands of people. So I think there's this mechanism where there was a period where developers were really, really, really in demand, and a lot of companies ended up paying them a lot of money to retain them and all of the perks and everything. They were so starved for quality developers that they made it so lucrative that so many people went into it in hopes of like making easy, insane money. And now that that's been saturated, they're like saying it feels like we're overpaying a lot of people a lot of money, and maybe now is the time to sort of readjust everyone's expectations, and then the layoffs start happening. So the people who entered this profession for sort of, I wouldn't say like get rich quick type scheme, but they were definitely motivated a lot by money. They're finding that those appetites are no longer in place in the same way, and either they have to settle for less and not something that they expected, or they have to try something else. So it's
Yeah,
yeah, not a very stable
yeah,
industry at the moment, especially if you're seeking like crazy levels of compensation, which in Canada is not really, there's not that much variance in Canada in terms of overall compensation. Like if you want some crazy salaries, you kind of have to go to Silicon Valley. So I can't really comment on that because I never worked in that environment.
yeah. In truth, I agree. I bless you. So, uh, for me, I spent a lot of time in university to study for this. So I know what you study. I know why you study in this field. But like I said earlier, like the capitalism part of it is that we have so many. See, software development industry is like the music industry. You know, everybody would use software. You know, everyone and their brothers and their families will need something on the internet to work. You know, some web page somewhere, some applications, this, that, mobile, this, everything. So the amount of opportunities actually, I don't think it's possible to get to a point where like it stops, because even the more people that we have is the more ideas that we have, and the more opportunities will come. So this is true, but so maybe if we have a regulatory board or something like this, like they do in other forms of engineering, I think we might get to a point where like we might struggle to even find people to do work, and maybe that might slow the pace of development down. So I don't know. This is just like thinking out the box. But the point I was going to make is that I just really think that I don't think it's a good comparison for someone who went to school to compare like, oh, people who don't go to school, who probably went to a boot camp, who probably
Mm-hmm.
have better work output compared to someone who went to uni. I think it's an unfair comparison, and I think everyone starts at a point. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you will all learn at different level, and if we
Yeah.
really look at what we do, especially if you work in like the web application side of software development, most of these things are like frameworks. Like they are things that even if you take your time to teach younger people, maybe they might even learn fast. You know, you
Bo-
never know. But
boring business
so
applications are boring, right?
you know, but um, so I don't think it's a fair assessment of what the person of what people know. You know,
Right.
because
No, it's
you
not a fair assessment, but I think that, so I mean universities have limited capacity, and obviously way more people can learn on their own that can go to university. Not everybody can afford a university, especially now.
yeah,
And the other reason I'm saying why university, you probably don't have to go to university, is just the amount of money spent does not correlate with the outcome. I think through other processes in our society, universities are so ridiculously expensive, and you're setting yourself up for decades of debt. And, you know, just the fact that you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars doesn't mean that you're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of education. You could pay orders of magnitude less and get exactly the same knowledge. It just depends on how motivated you are. And I find that people who do boot camps are usually, so they're usually older. They're usually like in their 30s. They usually have a career that they're not happy with and they want to transition, and they don't have the time or the money to go to university for 5 years and put their life on hold. It's much easier to put your life on hold for a month for a boot camp than to do it for 4 years and however many hundreds of thousands of dollars they have to spend. And from a personal experience of teaching at a boot camp and interacting with a lot of them, not all of them, but there's going to be some who are, they're more hungry and they don't have pretenses about what they know and what they don't know. They understand that, they had a very, very short period of time to be exposed to some of these things. And, the boot camp, it's kind of like the military boot camp where we need to get somebody out the door very, very fast. Here's pants and shirt made out of paper, and here's a machine gun made out of stamped parts that are going to fall apart after 3 shots. Those of you who survive are going to make it, but not all of you are going to survive. That's kind of the whole idea behind a boot camp. Like, I know that a lot of them claim high success rates and placements and stuff like that, but I follow some of the people on LinkedIn because I've connected with a lot of the students on LinkedIn, and not all of them are in software right now. Some of them move to more managerial roles. It's still tangentially like in IT broadly, but not everybody. So it's like, yeah, maybe you have a very high degree of placement, but in terms of like a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, not many people stick, right? So it's not for everyone. But then again, it's more of an anecdote. It's not like a generalization. But people who go to university, they think that they know a lot because they went to university. And for some of them, it takes a couple of bumps to kind of, downgrade that ego a little bit and be like, okay, yeah, maybe I need to learn a bunch of stuff and be more humble. But I've seen also some who are like, I'm university trained. What the hell are you going to teach me? You've only been in this industry for 20 years, but I've been in the university for 5. Like, there's that little disconnect between their ability and the way that they perceive their own ability, and very little humility to boot. So it becomes very difficult to kind of align them in the direction properly.
Yeah.
So
I understand it. I understand this, and this happens to everyone. This is not, you see,
that's true.
the point I'm trying to make here is it's not to compare. I'm not comparing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and my exact point is that we don't compare.
Yeah.
You know, different people have different paths, and like how they get into whatever they want to do in life is different.
Yeah.
We all have different levels of motivation.
Yeah. I guess
you can go to university for 5 years and still come out and still not be able to even,
I think the one thing that I was gonna say is, I believe that we did touch on it a little bit before, is that going to a university is an indicator in itself. And I feel like maybe right now it's a bit less, because I hear about all of the problems of like modern university education, about how watered down it gets and how student-centric universities get, because they want more people in seats paying those outrageous fees, so they don't dare, fail them. So the quality kind of gradually drops and drops and drops. So if maybe like 20 years ago you told me, oh, this person is Harvard educated or something, I'd be like, wow, this is really impressive. But in this day and age, if you say they're Harvard educated, I'd be like, that's a little bit sus, I don't exactly know about that. And so, but it does signal the ability to stick to something for long enough. And if we take an idealized form of a university, it's a very, very rigorous enterprise. So not ideally most people should be filtered out. Like not everybody should graduate from a university. The notion that everybody who joins a university should graduate is absolutely idiotic, because that's just not how it should work. There should be a very stringent criteria that only the best actually manage, and if you don't, you get to try again, but you don't just apply day one and then 5 years later, whatever you do or don't do, you just get a diploma and be like, hey, I'm a university graduate now. And it seems like it's leaning more toward this variant rather than the first one. And so that's why it is a signal, but on the other hand, it's sort of tainted a little bit recently. So I don't even know right now.
Yeah.
It's easier to just ignore that and test for specific skills, and then it doesn't really matter. You know, it's kind of like a blind audition. Like, write me some code or reason about a problem. If you reason about it in a way that makes sense, I don't care if that was instilled to you at a university or you watched a podcast or read a blog post or a book and picked that up on your own.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. I think this was also the same idea that Elon Musk had. He said something like this, and I agree with you. But are we going to do the same for other? Are we going to get to, should we be doing the same for like other fields of engineering? For example, we could do the same for like civil engineering. In fact, maybe right now that could solve our problem of shortage of doctors around the world right now. You know, we could have like set up like a 3-year program for doctors, and just like the best of the best that graduated with the best results in these 3 years qualifies to be a doctor.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that side. I have a couple of friends who went through medical school and nursing school, and how big of a gauntlet that was, and how the overall industry is it's very difficult to work in. And I just don't know enough to make that kind of comparison. I still think that for some professions, there should be a filter. Like, I don't want a random person off the street doing a surgery on me, basically, right?
But you see, this is also very delicate, because right now we have in software industry, we have a lot of issues with like our software. So like software is getting more than just like a website. Like, you can afford to make mistakes. Like, if you make certain mistakes or like certain issues, like the other day we were talking about like certain things that we'll do to manage for the environment, like some coding techniques. Like, there are certain things that if you can afford to make mistakes. You know, you can afford to, if as a doctor, if you make a mistake on someone's health, the person probably dies.
Yes.
As a civil engineer, let's say like if
you don't want those bridges collapsing,
exactly. If you make a mistake before, as a software developer, if you make a mistake, the worst thing that will happen is like, oh, they'll be like, oh, it's cute, you know.
But you know, I did mention that there were some software mistakes that cost people lives in various gruesome ways.
Exactly.
So there
point.
is still, it's just that in medicine, I mean, I don't go to doctors, thankfully, because a lot of times, you know, anything, you go to a doctor, they give you 35 seconds of their time and they prescribe you an antibiotic and send you on your way. And if you ask some other questions, they're like, 1 question per visit, please, only, have a nice day, right? So that system isn't quite working out for whatever reasons. I have some theories, but again, it's just, I'm so ignorant on that whole thing that, you know, I'm not even going to say anything right now, because why would I?
I hope I'm wrong too.
Yeah, same thing for civil engineering. I think there's, again, degrees. The advice to take an antibiotic, take it with a grain of salt, is whatever. And then there's, you know, chronic disease management or maybe surgical interventions. Like, the higher the risk, the more vetting I'd like that person to have. And so the same thing, that's why you don't hire an intern and get them to write your transaction management for bank software. Like, people, I mean, mostly people are not stupid. They're not going to let that happen. It's just that we don't have an official designation institution for this. But I mean, that's the thing too, because some people think that if it wasn't for some sort of regulatory thing, people would start doing crazy things. It's like there's going to be some people who will be doing it, but mostly businesses like to stay in business. So they're not going to make just arbitrarily stupid decisions like that. Like, if it's good for the business, they're probably already doing it. You don't have to mandate things that are good for business. If it's good for business, business will adopt it. Most things that have to be mandated are not good for business. And I mean, okay, they might be not good for business, but they could be good for general public. So there's that thing, right? So there's this balance between, because again, if business just optimized for its own sake, it can devolve into some horrific, dystopia, like our cyberpunk dystopia, as people call it, corporations running everything and things like that. So, but broadly, I would say, like, I don't know, like 80% of software is of no immediate consequence. It is definitely of like chronic consequence. And we had an episode on like stealing people's time, and we just can't count reliably these side effects, but nobody's going to die right now. And that's why it's mostly fine, in my opinion, anyway.
I don't know if I agree with that, because 80% is a lot. There's a lot of things to lose. You can build, I mean, we don't have to get into it, right? But I just don't think 80% is a lot, because
I mean, it's not a certified number. It's like just out of ether. I just said it. It has no backing behind it.
Because like these days, like we live maybe 10 years ago, if you build an application and like something happens on the app, maybe some people, they lose their information, or like there is some sort of security breach, nobody might hold you. People might not just hold you responsible for anything. 10, 15 years ago, they might just let it go. They'd be like, oh, oops, technology is not technology. How do you say that in Gen Z?
Right,
but anyway, but these days, there's a lot to lose. Like, if I give you my credit card, I put my credit card on your website, and for some reason, someone was able to access my card information and take my money.
Yeah, but
this is a lot to lose.
Yes, but now it's this is just, well, even with credit cards, and I'm not excusing crappy software, right? But like even with credit cards, if it's been fraudulently obtained from you, you have recourse. And a lot of the things, it's like, okay, so if you want to be a civil engineer and build a bridge, and you make a design and the bridge gets built, there is your signature on it. You are personally liable. So, but if we have people become
one person,
well, I don't know the specific, but there is a clear liability, right? Okay.
I do.
Right.
So, for example, as a civil engineer, they don't work the way we do. So, for example, civil engineers, they work in like teams, and there is someone who is going to be the manager and someone who is going to be the project. There are different levels of managers.
Yes.
And they get all these things. Most of the time, they work in like something we would call waterfall model. They have like
it's just
everything
strict stages and approvals. Yeah,
you get it. So, but for us, the main issue that we have in our own industry, in our own field of engineering, is the capitalism thing. We can have more civil engineers right now who probably have what benefit. I don't know exactly what the benefit that would mean to the industry. Maybe we would have more roads, more bridges. How many bridges can we build in a year? But in our industry, you can sleep and wake up tomorrow and think of an idea that you want to build, and the next thing you're looking for resources. So like the need for this resource a lot.
But that is exactly my point. If we were to institute an artificial barrier, either through professional certification, like you can't put a website on the internet unless you have some type of, like electricians have like the red seal where they're certified to do work on your house. And mostly they have to have it because of insurance companies, because insurance says they went through training, therefore, but if it's some random person, we will deny you your claim because it wasn't done by a professional. even though the person could have exactly the same set of skills. The problem is if we institute this artificial speed bump on the way, all of that innovation, like I worked with people who work in medical fields, software, healthcare, their process is like literally 10 times getting to market, getting anything to market takes them 10 times longer than it does us with all of our bureaucracy because of all of the government regulation. So if you institute it across the board, that whole industry will just be paralyzed. Like nothing is going to happen until 10 years from now by the time nobody cares. Like this is not the kind of industry, like, and still I said like in medical software and in automotive and in space and military and stuff, they still have those certifications and those types of measures, right? And that's why it takes so long to get the product on the market, because it has to go through all of that stuff. But if you need a red seal just to put a web page on the internet, and if you need 5 years education to accept credit cards online, the whole internet will die. It will die. I kid you not. It's just gonna stagnate and die. So
yeah,
how do we?
I know this.
Where do we go? Where do we go?
This is what I was saying. Like I know this, like, and I was explaining this to you that the amount, if we had to put like a regulatory soft cap on it, it's probably going to reduce the amount of resources that we have to actually do the work, because maybe, yeah, there will be a lot of things like that will be blocked. But I don't, the only thing that got us here into this conversation is like I am not sure if it's a good thing to do to compare, oh, this person is a university graduate and maybe like,
oh yeah,
because I don't think it's a good thing to do, because
yeah, no, we've established that. Yeah.
Yeah, so because everyone starts from a level, we all start from the same point. So like most times, like people who are like university graduates, like there's a lot of expectations from you, like you're supposed to know this, you're supposed to know that. Yes, but listen, I just finished school, like I just got out of classroom. So, and even in universities, I don't know, maybe these days, but years ago when I was there, I don't think nobody was sitting you down to teach you like, oh, this is how to code.
Yeah.
They just give you like the tools, like the
yeah. I think my
environment.
My personal expectation from any junior developer that joins my team, regardless whether they are university educated or bootcamp or solo or nothing at all, is that they have to understand, they have to have the ability to read and write code, mostly read code. Well, I mean, they have to be able to write code, but they should be able to read code way better than they should be able to write code at first, at least, right? Because they have to understand what other people have written. They have to broadly understand, just overall, what is the software supposed to be doing at a basic level. And then everything else comes on top. Like, yeah, it's nice when they know the syntax of the language, because that just makes them get into it quicker, right? But again, like, yeah, what do you even teach in, like, unless it's a very academic thing? Because like, okay, sure, maybe you've done like advanced math. For building web pages, it's mostly not as like a lot of the things at least in my domain of web development, most university things would be probably beneficial with a big asterisk there. Because again, when you are exposed to a lot of different things without full understanding of them, that also creates this red herring effect where you think that something is causal in any particular scenario because some things vaguely align, but it's not, and you just spend a lot of time investigating something that's not gonna pan out because like overabundance of concepts that you know but don't fully understand 100%, right? You've just been exposed to them, and you feel they apply but they don't, and you spend time wasting time like searching for answers in the wrong places. So there's that risk too. And yeah, I don't know, I usually in these types of things, even though it's not very scalable, I prefer apprenticeship style more, old school. If you're a blacksmith Or if you want to become a blacksmith, you don't go for blacksmithing university degree. You join as an apprentice with a blacksmith, and they teach you everything they know, right?
Yeah, this yeah,
So
this is good.
that's a
Everyone
very
does this.
very practical and pragmatic approach. And the thing is like it's like how many bad habits is this person gonna pick up
Mhm.
while studying obsolete concepts at a university because they haven't updated their curriculum in last 5 years? Because that's a thing too. The thing is, okay, one thing that I've definitely seen many times with new developers is that they imprint on stuff like ducklings immediately without understanding if it's a bad pattern or a good pattern. I've seen them equally imprint on bad patterns as they do on good, and then it takes so much time to unlearn that I'd rather take a person without that much baggage, so to speak, so that they haven't had a chance to pick up a whole lot of bad patterns, and I can just teach them the good ones in at least what I constitute good. It might not be universal, again, because a lot of it, we talked a lot about it recently in our team about the not necessarily the good practices versus bad practices, but more of a code aesthetics. Because aesthetics are different for different people. Different people like different things. And so what is aesthetically pleasing to one person might not be for another. And I have a certain code aesthetic that I am instilling in my team. And it is in that sense, it is my way or highway, and it's very authoritarian, but I have good reasons for all of my choices. So I think they make sense, right? But it is at the end of the day, it is an aesthetic. If they do something that works a different way that doesn't fit the aesthetic, it doesn't mean that they did it wrong. It's just it doesn't align with the overall theme, right? And so, like in if you look at it from this perspective, the bad habits is just maybe habits that are of different aesthetic that don't play well with what we have, right? So
Well, at the end of the day, it comes down to individuals. At the end of the day, like hopefully everyone takes their opportunity as it comes, and you get to make these choices for yourself and decide, you know, which is the good way, which is the bad way, because it's all like based on perspective. Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
say
yeah,
it's based on perspective. But yeah, so I think when it comes to picking up habits, like yeah, some just never leave you, you know. Even like after a few years, you still have some of those habits. But it's what it is. You pick up like when you said like apprenticeship. I think everyone goes through apprenticeship in their
yeah,
careers in different fields. Even if you work as a as a doctor,
yeah,
even.
yeah, yeah,
So you spend 7 years going to
yeah, yeah,
university or something. You still do your like housemanship or whatever that thing
yeah.
is like, and it's still we still have to get into
Yeah.
the field to learn
But
certain things.
that's I just thought of something, and that's I think where this disconnect kind of comes, because a lot of people have this idea that when a junior comes in and starts asking all of the questions, they would refuse, saying, weren't you supposed to learn that at your university? So there's that kind of conflict, right? And it's like out of
Yeah,
nowhere
that's not
too.
good.
Because if I know that the person that's coming in haven't been through like, okay, if they've been through a boot camp, I know that they know very little, because there's only so much you can learn in a very short period of time. I don't have expectations, but a lot of people do have expectations. And again, they weren't the one curating their curriculum, so they don't know what they've learned or haven't learned, and now they're making presumptions about what they should have learned. And it's like this person is here asking you a question because they don't know the fact.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Mhm.
okay, there's a difference. I'm taking like the happy path case. It's like they don't know, and that's why they ask. Because there's also cases where they're too lazy and they're trying to offload their work onto you by asking, which does happen too.
Ah,
That does
okay.
happen too, right? And understanding which is kind of crucial too, because I have a problem, I've asked you, now you have a problem, right? Because now you're
Yeah.
spending like, and I'm not necessarily saying it about anyone, but like, if I spend time instead of you for the solution
Mhm.
of your problem, I'm now doing your work. And
Yeah,
sometimes
that's true.
answering some questions is necessary because I need to fill gaps in your understanding. And sometimes it could be like I'm inadvertently doing your work without realizing it. And that's not ideal, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But you see, um, just to add to what you just said, recently I learned something in my career so far. Like I learned that sometimes the people that are supposed to be the ones to know, so for example, the senior guys who are supposed to be the are also learners. So they're also still learning. So there are certain questions, I mean, they are certain, with emphasis on certain questions, that some people might ask, and it challenges the senior person to think about it, to figure it out. It's not because they don't know it, but it's just like it's going to take like an extra effort for them to actually like try to remember, oh, years ago when I did this kind of thing or like something, how did I fix it? So some people they have the patience to actually help, but not everyone is like this. Some people don't have as much patience and or they have a different style of like figuring it out. So when someone comes to you to say like, yeah, you should know it, you should figure it out, that's probably their own way of like pushing you to figure things out. So some people also come into like the industry maybe a little bit um not prepared for this type of treatment. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
so yeah, that can be a bit uncomfortable.
So
But at the end of the day, like we are all trying,
yeah,
Vasili. We are all
I
trying.
yeah, for sure. I actually tell junior developers, like we do one-on-ones, and I tell them that when you're a junior developer and you're just joined the company, that first 6 months, you're in a very unique position because ideally nobody really should have any kind of crazy expectations of a junior developer that just started at the company. They're expected not to know things. And so now is the time to ask all of the questions. And like, if you find something that we are doing and you're like, why are you doing it like this? Everybody might know that it's not really the best way to do it, but we just kind of do it because, and nobody really brings up attention to it. But you, as a junior, have an opportunity to actually say, I don't understand why we're doing it like this. This is stupid. Or maybe not stupid, but like, I don't understand why we're doing it like this. And that forces the conversation of, oh, you know what? Yeah, that's not great. So there
Yeah,
there
true.
there are benefits of being a junior too, is that you get
Yeah.
to uncover habitual weirdness and
Mhm.
habitual what's the word I'm looking for? Just habitual crappiness. That those
Yeah.
pieces that we kind of
Definitely.
Stockholm syndrome ourselves into, and we just like, oh yeah, that's always been like that. That's just the way it is. We do this because we just do it this way, and nobody's challenging it. And the thing is that once you learn how to go over all of the rough edges, most people would
Mhm.
settle into just accepting it and never questioning it again because it's just easier to bypass all of the bumps and corners and just like whatever. But that very short window in the beginning where you haven't gotten used to the crappy parts about stuff,
Yeah.
you can be a driving force for change.
To be honest, I feel like a lot of people will probably want to have senior developers like you in their team because clearly you think about these people because it's not common to have um people like this, like who actually genuinely care about the development of other people. It's not. I don't know if it's a common thing, and I've been in like different teams so far, and I don't know if I've seen a lot because sometimes I know like everyone comes to their 9 to 5 and just go home. So
Yeah.
like if you're asking me a bunch of questions, like yo, relax,
I yeah.
But
I still don't know if
yeah,
it's
there
out
are
of the
people like this.
kindness of my heart or I just can't be bothered for cleaning up after their messes and I'd rather they do things right the first time around.
Yeah,
So there's a
I
little
know
bit of
it's not.
selfish
Yeah,
angle to that as well.
we are all trying. Like I just think it's a good thing because I think it's a good thing to have this type of mindset.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, we're all trying. We're all
Yeah.
just doing our best
Yeah. Yeah.
to hopefully
Yeah,
We get there.
hopefully more people adopt it. But I think it also fits in your like personality type. You know, if you do your big
Yeah,
five, definitely interactions between people on different parts of that little pentagon
yeah,
is gonna be different. So I happen to fall into this one in particular. Maybe one day we can I can take a look at the results of my test and just we can chat about it briefly.
that'd be yeah,
Yeah,
sure. I'm
you
fine
should do
to see that.
one. You know what? You should do one yourself. I'll send you the link, and then next time
Okay,
we can compare and see where we
all
are.
right, all right.
I think
Okay,
that'd be
deal.
pretty
Send me the
interesting.
link.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Vasili. Thank you for your time today. The conversations. It's really nice. You know,
Yeah, it's
I
nice
feel
to
like
be
I tell
back.
you every week that it's always nice to talk to you, and you probably just know it now, you know? That
No, I do notice. I do notice, and I'm glad that you still feel that way because
yeah.
you know the one week you don't say that, I'll be like, okay, well this podcast is coming to an end.
Nah, basically, we're good. Like, I think, yeah, it's always good to have someone who is not afraid or like uncomfortable about sharing their experience. And I think so far, there's not a lot of people I know like this, and it's just a really good thing to have people who will go through life, the good part, the bad part, the things that they do perfectly, the things that they realize they could have done better. They're not really afraid to
Yeah,
let it out and to show you for other people to learn.
I'm
I really think
yeah.
it's a good trait.
I'm following the Bill Burr model. It's like, fuck it, just say it. What's the worst that's
Yeah.
gonna happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's good lesson. So
Yeah.
thank you, Vasily.
Thank you very much, Mo. It's been nice seeing you. Unfortunately, it's been a while. I've been a little bit sick, so we couldn't record one last week, and I'm still recovering. You know, my voice is still somewhat busted. Hopefully, by the next time, it get even better. And yeah, we're glad to have everybody with us in the year 2024. And yeah, I think that maybe this year, instead of bitching about how terrible everything is, we actually just focus on making everything better instead of just commenting passively on it. So we'll keep that theme
Mhm.
in mind for this year, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks very much, and have a great day. Bye.